All right.
Howdy.
Hi, Matt. Nick? How's it going?
Going well. I'm ready, Ashton, for the greatest show on earth.
Bravo. Okay, well, let's give everyone a couple of seconds to hop on to the Zoom call. Looks like people are starting to trickle in. So once we see that number slow down a little bit, we can go ahead and get started.
Perfect.
I know it's been a while since we've done a live webinar, so
I know. I heard that the people on Twitter were talking, and they said that they were so excited for another webinar from Matt Netco.
oh,
They were like, Netco, I'm excited to see your face. You're putting on this webinar for mobile CI/CD. So I'd just like to apologize in advance for everyone that it is indeed me, Matt Kremer, and I acknowledge your Twitter comments that
I don't think
I'm
any
not
apologies are
Netco.
necessary.
Excellent.
I have a lot of confidence in both you and Nick for your presentation today. It's going to go very smoothly. So thanks
Yes,
for taking the time, guys.
it'll be fun.
Okay. Well, it looks like that number's slowing down a bit, so we can go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm on the marketing team here, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. And with me, I've got Matt Kremer. He's the director of project management at Ionic, and Nick Hyatt. He's the director of project engineering. And they'll be giving today's presentation, Solving Mobile CI/CD with Appflow. And before getting started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping notes for you. Today's webinar is being recorded, so after the event, I'll send you an email with a link to the recording and the slides, along with some helpful links that we are going to cover during today's presentation so that you can review this content later on. And the presentation will be about 45 minutes, and we'll use that remaining time to answer your questions. So feel free to submit questions during the event. To do this, just click on that Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many after the event. And then if you have any technical issues that come up, you can also send me a message using that same Q&A box, and I'll try and help you offline as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Matt and Nick for the presentation. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ashton. So as Ashton said, I'm Matt Kremer. I'm Director of Product Management here at Ionic. Today, we're going to be talking about mobile CI/CD using Appflow. And with me, I have Nick, who's going to help provide some color commentary and help us with Q&A as well from Director of Product Engineering. So thanks for joining me, Nick. Nick will probably just be interrupting me if I say anything wrong.
But you will.
All right. So first off, let's set the agenda straight just to make sure that we're all on the same page for what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to talk about mobile CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery, DevOps. What is it? Why is it important? Then we'll dive into using Appflow to build out CI/CD, right? What features does it have that might help you on your CI/CD or DevOps journey? And then my favorite part is number 3. We are going to go through a full demo of the Appflow platform. We're going to cross our fingers like Nick did, and we're going to pray that everything goes well because this is a really in-depth webinar, really in-depth demo that I'm excited to give you. There is a lot of setup we'll be going through. We're literally going to set up a full development, staging, production, CI/CD pipeline in Appflow from start to finish. We're even going to get it on our device. We're going to be building native binaries. The whole 9 yards is going to be covered in this demo. So I'm super excited to go through that with you. So first off, super interesting stat that honestly hurts me inside. This is from Forrester. It states that the average enterprise team is shipping 4 times per year or less. And what I see when I look at that stat is something where, they're only providing value to the customers using their applications, new value, increased value once every 3 or so months. That might also mean that a bug or a fix or something related to anything that's broken in that application might also not get fixed until that next major release. And that kind of major release flow, that major release cycle, I think is embedded into a lot of organizations. And we'd like to see that change, right? We'd like to see more people adopt a more rapid iterative process. We want our customers to be getting more and more value from us over time and getting their issues fixed as fast as humanly possible, right? So that's where CI/CD and DevOps kind of come into play, right? But
I was going to just say we want our customers to get more at bats is one way to think of it too.
yeah,
Essentially, if you're only shipping 4 times a year, you get 4 chances to see if what you did worked, and that's generally not enough for business.
Yeah, that's a super good point. Like, what if you messed up, right? Like, what if this feature isn't actually valuable to the customer? What if it's super confusing to use, right? Like, it's just the customers can't wrap their head around the user experience. And you find out 3 months later that, like, oh man, we missed the mark, right? Not a good situation to be with. Totally agree with you, Nick. So from that, there's been born kind of this culture shift, right? DevOps being kind of a culture and how we do development and operations and work well together, and how we combine what we're working on and put kind of more power and more control in the developer's hands in how we go through this flow. So DevOps is really a culture that people need to start building out in their businesses that goes through this cycle that you can see on the right-hand side here. So you might start out planning a feature, then you've got to develop the feature, you've got to build out your binaries, you've got to test them and make sure they're not broken, you want to release them, deploy them to multiple different channels, maybe you've got development, staging, and production, then you're going to monitor these things, make any changes that might be required, right? Like, oh, we missed the mark on one tiny thing, let's pivot a little bit and get a new feature in there, and then you're going to start the whole thing over, right? So this process here is what Nick was describing as an at-bat. Like, one of these flows is effectively an at-bat. So the faster we can get through this process culturally, the better. When we look at continuous integration and continuous delivery, or continuous deployment, what you're looking at is two different parts of this. So continuous integration is build and test, right? How every commit that I push up to my Git repository, right? I want to run that, run some tests, make sure it builds, make sure it's not broken in that, nice vanilla environment, that nice build server we have up and running. And then I want to do continuous delivery as well, right? I want to go release to 3 different channels, deploy with different configurations on those binaries. And the more we can automate that, because CI and CD are both really about automation, the more we can automate that, the less us as a development team working on an application have to worry about how fast this process is going, because the automation makes it fast for us. It enables us to move quickly and get more of those at-bats.
Yeah, helps remove some of the bottlenecks.
just a few bottlenecks for sure. So why is that important, right? Like we've been talking about, we need that faster iteration. We need those at-bats. We need to be continually improving for my customers because they expect it, right? Our customers now live in a fast-paced world, and so do we, where we're interested in our improvements happening, today, the next day. How can we improve the way we're working? And how can we ship those benefits to our customers? Gone are the days where you even see companies like Adobe, right? Adobe pivoting to a rapid deployment model where they have multiple releases of their software as a service Photoshop right now, where before it was a yearly release, right? So times have changed. Even large companies like Adobe are going through this sped up process of how do we release improvements to our software as fast as possible, right? And so not only do we have to iterate and get those things live, we need feedback in them, right? We need to make sure that we hit the mark, make sure that we accomplish the goal that our customer wanted us to accomplish. And then on top of that, right, there's team dynamics. So we're all working on teams of various sizes. If you're on a team with 5, 10, 20 engineers, and you're all contributing to the same code base, you're all working off of different branches, off of different points in time. You want to make sure that all of that work is still working well together, right? You want to make sure that, if Nick's programming something and I'm programming something, that our stuff is still working together. So this process in an automated fashion allows us to check in, like, did that work? Did that work? Did we break it, right? We ensure that our collective work goes faster together. And really what all of that boils down to is this concept of if you're not shipping, you're not learning. The key objective here is learn how we can impact our customers' lives better, right? And that goes for enterprise apps, that goes for consumer apps, right? We need to iterate and make everything we're doing better, right? So when it comes to getting in the way of that, right? Where does that process start to break down? How is that process difficult, right? Especially if it's not automated, okay? First off, we have a lot of different unreliable build environments going on. If you're a team of 10 engineers, you've got 10 different machines, theoretically, of 10 different sets of dependencies that people are building on. How can we get rid of that and focus really on one really stable build environment? But also that build environment can be changing externally too. New versions of Xcode come out. New versions of different dependencies come out. How do we keep up to date with all of that, right? Then we have this concept of the App Store approval process. You got a bug out, right? And that bug needs to be fixed quickly, but you've got to go wait for a review from the iOS store. We also need to get this app in our stakeholders' hands. We need to make sure that they approve of the direction we're going, right? We can get something real and tangible for them to play with in their hands quickly to say, did this hit the mark? Is this going to work for you? And then back to kind of that team issue, that team dynamic. How do we find issues as early as possible? I don't want to wait till like the end of a sprint and say, all right, we're merging everything. And then we merge development from multiple developers and find out, oh, snap, like we all overwrote each other's code and like changed some things and none of it works together anymore, right? So we want to find those issues early too. So a lot of stuff messes up the speed of going through one of those cycles. And, mobile DevOps, mobile CI/CD exists to help us get through those cycles quickly without these problems. So when looking at that Forrester stat, right, people who go through in the enterprise and develop, ship a release 4 times a year, we wanted to see how has Appflow already impacted that, right? Are we hitting the mark? Is our product helping people to ship more effectively and get through those loops as fast as humanly possible, right? And what we discovered through our 2019 Ionic developer survey, and that's all public, you can go check out that stuff. We link analyses on our blog all the time. Every year we do a developer survey. We found that the average Appflow user is actually shipping 3 to 4 times per week or more than that. So our iterative cycle here is like found a bug, fixed it that day, right? Tested a new feature in production that week. Right? We got things into our customers' hands as fast as possible. We moved through those cycles by automating a lot of the steps utilizing Appflow. So that's shown directly by the users of Appflow going through this process quickly and effectively. So how does Appflow actually do that, right? That benefit, 3 to 4 times per week, that's pretty big benefit. So what are the things that Appflow has to do that get us to that point? I like to break this out into 3 major features and then also some side benefits from those that we've been talking about. So in terms of what are the features of Appflow that help us from CI/CD perspective, because CI/CD truly is the software that helps you with the DevOps culture, right? How does Appflow provide software that helps build that culture? So first and foremost, we help you build native app binaries. So if you've got your web project, your Ionic project running locally on your machine, you need to turn it into a native binary. You want to do that in a clean environment, right? The second part is live hot code updates. So this is a way that you can send updates of any web assets directly to your end users. And we'll talk about all the really cool ways we can use that in just a little bit. Third, we publish directly to app stores. So we can support going to TestFlight, the App Store Connect system, public app store, the Google Play Store, Google Play beta program, beta channels. Like you can get all these different places utilizing Appflow. So that's the tail end of that CI/CD process, right? The deployment. And then we can also watch your repository and build every commit. So that's part of like the side benefit of just working together as a team with a CI/CD flow. We can start finding those issues a lot faster. So let's dive in a little bit more detail here. So first and foremost, why Appflow, right? Why is this a unique product in the first place? So first off, no prior CI/CD experience required. You don't need to be well-versed in how to boot up a server, program your own CI/CD pipelines, or anything like that. Appflow is something where a team that with no prior CI/CD or DevOps experience can start building that culture for themselves through quick and easy automations that we'll be going through how to set up today. It's also tailored specifically to mobile. So instead of being like an extremely broad, I can build and do everything platform, it is very targeted at the problems that mobile development teams face and need to get through on a daily basis. That being said, if you already have a CI/CD process set up using a third-party tool, we work with that existing tool chain. We can take over just the complicated steps that arise from this being mobile development as opposed to, an application that's just running on a normal Linux server. So now let's dive into each of the features real quick and talk about how Appflow helps us get through these. First off, being native app builds. So one of the most difficult things here, honestly, guys, is just infrastructure, right? How do we get all of these builds managed in a clean environment when we also have to build on top of Mac hardware, on top of ever-changing software dependencies where you need different versions of Xcode, different versions of Android Studio, different versions of CocoaPods, like all of this stuff. And then you also have to figure out how to automatically scale it. right? So native app builds from a CI/CD perspective gets difficult merely due to the nature of how you have to build a mobile application. So Ionic handles all of that infrastructure for you. You send us, an Ionic project or a capacitor project or a Cordova project. We help you turn it into a native app binary. So you don't have to worry about anything in the middle, right? We just take care of everything in the middle for you. You tell us you want a binary, we give you a binary. The next cool thing is really a superpower of hybrid app development in general. When you have a hybrid application, you have the native binary and native code associated with that app, but you also have all of these web assets that are inside your application: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, audio files, videos, all of that stuff, right? And that is explicitly allowed to be updated on the fly per App Store and Google's terms of service. So any of those web assets, fair game for fixing a bug by modifying a JavaScript file. So Appflow's live update service gives you a place where you can send us a version of code. We'll build it in a clean CI/CD fashion, and then you can push it live to the people using your app on their devices. We'll overwrite the web content they have with the new content, and we do that super fastly because we use differentials to pull it off. But we overwrite with that new change, and bam, it's live. We didn't have to wait for App Store approval. It was instantaneous. And then you can also use this to have multiple channels, right? Today, I'm going to show off development, staging, production channels, and we're going to go through that process, and we're going to pull that off by having our app check into different places for these live app updates. So it's super cool. And as we go to, I'm going to mention more and more use cases during the demo of how you can utilize these services in interesting ways for stakeholders, your end users, all that stuff. When it comes to App Store publishing, we have one-click push to App Store. So you come in, you authenticate, and you say, I want to go to TestFlight. And we help you take that IPA file and get it to App Store Connect. Once it's in App Store Connect, you can go edit any settings and deploy it to TestFlight, deploy it live to production if you'd like, and the same thing with Google Play. So if you're anything like me, every time I have to do this for one of my applications, I have to go look up what I'm doing, find out how it works, go through and the exact process that's extremely convoluted in my opinion of getting my binary to where it needs to go. So we help you get that binary to the app stores so that you don't have to worry about any of the steps in between. So you might go edit your app's description, hit go, and you're done. Everything from start to finish happens for you automatically. On top of that, so those are the features, right? We can pull all of those features together in an automated fashion. And that's when we really start to get at the benefit of continuous integration and continuous delivery. Continuous being the main thing here, right? We push a change to our code. Maybe it's on that staging channel. We want staging to trigger an iOS build, to trigger a web build, to set that web build live on our staging channel. Then we want to send it to TestFlight for people to play with it. And we want to trigger a webhook and maybe, upload it to S3 for our Q&A team to go check it out, right? So you can get fully automated workflows through this system without having expertise on how to tie anything together. So you can do this all via Neat UI that I'm going to show off during the demo. It allows you to automate, find those issues immediately, and work with your existing tools. So if you want to compare and look at, that's cool, Appflow provides me all these mobile specific things, but I'm already using Jenkins. I'm already using Circle CI. I'm already using GitHub Actions, right? What can Appflow do that these can't? And the answer really boils down to us just making the mobile side of the house much easier. I want you to use these two things together, right? If you're already using Jenkins locally in your organization, but you're having trouble figuring out how to automate Mac builds, we have the ability to get you those automated IPA files. We can go help you submit them to the App Store. We can give you that real-time update feature with the live update channel. We can have multiple of those channels, right? We can do all this magic that hybrid mobile really has about it on top of a general CI/CD workflow. So the reality is you can combine these things. They can both be used at the same time. You don't need to worry about maintaining those mobile development environments, about maintaining how do I deploy to multiple web channels, to multiple different sources for my IPA or APK files, right? How do I do this via the command line, right? Right now, if you have a Jenkins pipeline, And that pipeline has to go to a Mac build. It's got to be running on a Mac, or it's got to go outsourced to a Mac somewhere. In Appflow, you can do that via the command line and just have one little line perform that entire build for you on a Linux machine. So it's a really cool use case to combine them. And then I'll give you some more details later, but this is also going to be a topic for the webinar happening next month. So give that a check too. All right, now is the time where we really cross our fingers. We are going to dive in and demo this entire process. So let's talk a little bit first about what we're going to accomplish in this demo before we just dive in. I have a couple different goals that I want to walk through. First and foremost, I've got my phone sitting next to me here. I want to get development, staging, and production binaries on this phone all at the same time. That way I can have my development workflow, my staging workflow, and a production binary getting updated directly on my device live whenever I'm working. And I don't want just like one app that I go swap out. I want 3 apps same time on my device. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to automate all these different workflows that not only help get those things to my phone, but also assist different aspects of my business, right? And we'll go through those use cases as we're implementing them. So without further ado, let's dive in to the demo. So this is Ionic Appflow's dashboard. So here I'm logged into my account. I have my organization and my list of apps. This we'll go through later. That's some stuff I already set up, so you don't have to worry about waiting for build times. So right now, though, I want a blank slate show you how to set everything up. So we are going to call this demo app, and we are going to create a new app. And this new application is not connected to anything yet. Okay, so I don't have any commits here. I don't have any builds. This is literally just a blank vessel that I can start to work with. So how do I get code into this thing? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect to GitHub. That's where my application already exists. That's where my source code is. So we're going to go to settings, Git. We're going to choose GitHub. And we are going to link to the aptly named Ionic Team 123 ABC application because that put it at the top of the list so I don't have to search for it. So let's connect to that repository. Now, once I start pushing code to that repo, we're automatically going to start to see commits populating, right? The other thing this does too is if you haven't given us permission yet, it'll pop up a little window and say, hey, we need the following permissions in GitHub to take a look at your repo. What we're going to get is a list of commits and their corresponding descriptions that we can then perform builds on. We can start to do native builds. We can start to do web builds, right? So let's talk about the initial commit. I already have an application, and it is running locally on my machine right now. I already have an application that's just our default tab starter that I've done a little bit of work on. So to get this, I just went through the normal Ionic start flow. This could be an existing application that you've already built that you want to use. But the long story short is this is a pretty vanilla application that I've already built here. So the initial code is just that default starter. Now, the next thing I did for this application is installed Capacitor. So Capacitor is a native runtime that allows hybrid development. It's an alternative to Cordova by the Ionic team that gives you code as the source of truth for your native project. So you have much more native control over here. So all I did was follow through the getting started guide on capacitorjs.com, followed through this guide and added Capacitor along with iOS support specifically in this application. So cool. We've got an app. We've installed Capacitor in it. The next thing I want to do is set up the live update service. So we're going to click deploy. We're going to go over to our destinations. So this is configurable by you. You can go in here and add new destinations. So I talked about how we want to get a development, staging, and production flow. So let's add some destinations. We're going to add development. That is a live update channel. Alternatively, you can go to the App Store or Google Play like I was talking about. But we're going to stick right now to adding development and staging as live update channels. Now that we have those, we're going to have to install the actual deploy plugin, the live update plugin, inside of our application, right? We're going to have to get it into our code base so that it can perform those for us. To do that, all you're going to do is click this install instructions. Personally, I like having the defaults for this just be my development channel. And then there's a couple different update methods, right? So we can download updates in the background while the user is utilizing the application and install them the next time the app loads. We can download them in the splash screen. You'll sit on the splash screen a little bit longer, and then we'll install those. Or you can manually set up your own update mechanism, right? So if you want to do that, you can check out our documentation and look at the API. What I've already gone ahead and did is ran this code in the command line to add the deploy plugin to my capacitor project. So we started an app, we added capacitor, we added deploy, and hooked it up to the development channel. And all that really does is set up some configuration in your app, telling the live update service to check into your specific app on the development channel and use the update method background. Yet again, you can check out our documentation for more information on this too.
For what it's worth, I always recommend the background personally, just based on experience, because I think it provides the best user experience. You don't have to worry about users sitting on the splash screen for long load times if they're on poor network connection. You don't have to worry about writing a bunch of code yourself. It kind of provides a nice experience for them, where they don't even realize that they're getting an update in the background, and the next time they go to open the app, it's just there and ready for them.
Yeah, it's definitely a really good set of defaults is that background mode. Hence it being the, the default when you click this is that background. So I advise you start there, and then you can always, tweak it later and play with the configuration or even manual configuration if you need something a little bit more complicated. Right? Some people even, we have customers doing dynamic stuff, right? Like there are 4 different channels, and after the user logs in, I need to pick which channel I go to and download an update from that channel, right? So if you need something a little more complicated, I'd use the API for that, but background, 100% a good place to start. All right, so we've got our app. Cool beans. We want to set up an actual process here on how we can manage development, staging, and production. So we're going to do a little bit of work in our application. Now, I've already programmed this stuff and made the commit. So we're going to look at the commit view here for the modifications I made to the project to set up multiple building environments. So we're actually going to configure development, staging, and production and make them do different things depending on which we choose. So the first I did was go in and add this staging configuration and add this dev configuration. Dev, we're just going to stay at defaults, not change anything. Staging, we are going to swap out the default environment, which I'll show you in a minute, with a different file, the environment.staging.ts file. And that file just has different configuration. Specifically, we're going to go call a different API and have a different name. Already up there was a production environment that just comes by default. And all this is done in angular.json. I think I'm rocking Ionic 5. So that angular.json is where you do the Angular environment specifically. There's an equivalent for React and any other framework as well. Really all we're doing is saying, hey, here's some build settings and some configuration that my app is going to import and use. So we modified angular.json to add the actual environments. Then what we did is we went down and added those configuration files. So here we have the production file, the staging file, and the default file. And you can see we just have 3 keys for each of these, right? Whether or not we're in production, the name of that build, and then the API we're going to hit. So we have localhost for our development, we have staging.api.com for staging, and we have production.api.com for production. Now we need to use those. First and foremost, we need to do something with them. So we have to figure out how to perform a build utilizing the correct set of parameters. So what I've done is I've modified my build script in package.json to say, hey, I'm going to look for the environment variable build_env. If it's set, we're going to use it. If it's not set, we're just going to default to dev. And then we're going to run that ng build with the configuration from that environment variable. So this allows me to look for an environment variable and run the command with that set of configuration. So that's what will kick off development, staging, or production with those file swaps from angular.json. Now, just to show this working, we're then going to modify some of our code to look at that data and just put it on the screen. So all I did was I added a little card. I said, our environment with 3 little rocket ships, hello, the name of the environment, and this environment is using this API to fetch data. And then in the controller, I literally just imported that environment file and set up the variables that I'm going to put on the screen. So Angular.json, we set up our environments. Then we set up the environment files with some more detail. We modified our build script, and then we imported it in a page just so we could look at it and see it working. Okay, so once I've done all of this, I want to run my application and see it working. So before this call, I just ran Ionic Lab. Ionic Lab is just a quick and easy command to get both an Android and iOS styled version of your app running in a browser at the same time. So it went through and it ran, serve for me, got everything up and running, and it popped open this view for me. So we can see iOS, we can see our Android styles, we can see we've got our environment, 3 rocket ships, hello development. This environment is using localhost. Same thing for the styling on Android. So our default Ionic Serve or Ionic Lab is going to utilize that dev environment that we set up, that dev configuration, the localhost API. So I might then go use this configuration and prepend it to any API call that my application makes, right? So we can actually use these settings inside the Angular file. Deep breath. So that was us setting up everything to be prepared for utilizing environments. We have not gotten to the CI/CD or the automated fashion. We've just done a lot of prep work to make this actually function.
And just as a quick side note for obviously the code, the commit changes that Matt showed there, where he's using Angular. For those folks who are using React or something else, the strategy he's using here is to literally swap out an entire file. It's a very Angular-esque thing with Angular.json. There's other patterns that are pretty commonly used. There's different Webpack plugins people use. Some of them, I'm not sure if they're built into the Create React app or not, but essentially that will allow you to use, for those of you familiar with Node.js, like process.m. Whatever the variable is, style syntax within your web application, even though it's going to be running in the web, so it's not going to have access to Node.js. And the Webpack plugin will simply basically swap out those variables. So you can achieve an identical outcome with just a little slightly different approach for something like React or a different framework you might use.
Definitely. All right. So let's talk about the next goal. The next thing we want to achieve here is getting ready to get native iOS binaries built in Appflow. I'm not going to show Android today, but we're going to go through iOS because it's more complicated. iOS is more difficult than Android in terms of setup here. So I want to go through the more difficult option just to prepare you kind of for setting up this process on your own. So we want dev, staging, production. We want to build all of those things on iOS. Remember, we want 3 apps on my phone at the same time. And what happens is there are some requirements if you want to do that. If you want to get 3 different binaries on your phone, we have to generate 3 different profiles. So where I'm at right now, and I've already done this in advance, is I'm at the Appflow documentation for package credentials. So we have to generate a set of iOS credentials associated with the builds I want to perform. And we're going to need 3 different profiles. We're going to need one for development, one for staging, one for production. Me personally, I like going through and doing the command line version of this setup just because I've already got the tools and it just works better in my opinion than going through some of these interfaces. But you're going to start off in the actual developer console for Apple, right? We are going to register an app ID, and I'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. But effectively, it's like this, right? com.ionicframework.myionicapp. So I've set up 3 of these, 3 different ones. That is what has to be different to get 3 binaries on our phone. So the ones I've set up that you'll see me using throughout this are com.mattkremer.testing1, .testing2, and .testing3. And those will represent my dev, staging, and production branches. So we're going to add all 3 of those to our Apple developer console. Then we are going to register my physical device in my developer console. So you're going to have to go through and explicitly state, this is the phone for this build. I'm using an ad hoc distribution. Ad hoc is what's going to let me literally copy an IPA file to this phone by explicitly defining the phone that I'm allowed to copy to. So you are allowed to copy to your phone, to your boss's phone. You can put in here, right? If you want to do a stakeholder update where you just get them an IPA and they, just install it directly on their device here. You might also be using like an enterprise certificate for mass distribution. You could be, several different types of certificates exist here, but we're going to be going through ad hoc. So this is the process where I like using the command line, right? We're going to want to generate a certificate signing request here, and then we are going to want to get that certificate up in Apple. Then we are going to want to convert that to a different type of file. So our goal here is a P12 file that we're going to give to Appflow. Then we're going to set up the different provisioning profiles. So this says, hey, I'm doing iOS app development. I'm going to do ad hoc. It is for this specific, com.mattkremer.testing1, this specific ID, and it's only allowed to be installed on Matt's phone. So you will wind up with one signing cert and a corresponding password, and 3 different provisioning profiles that represent your 3 different IDs with the ability to go to a specific set of devices. So I've set all of that up in advance. So let's go and actually start to add these. So if we go to build and we go to certificates, we can start setting these up. So I'm going to add my first profile. Let's set up staging while we're talking right now. So we want to go staging. I'm going to choose production for the type though, because an ad hoc build is technically a production build, and that's what we're going to perform. So I'm going to create that. It is going to ask me for that store certificate. Whoops, give me 2 seconds here. I got to go find the right place we're going. We're going to go to my test app. We're going to go to certs, and we are going to give that P12 file to Ionic. And then we are going to enter our password and give it the staging provisioning file. So remember, this is one of those things that there are 3 of them. So we are going to do Matt testing staging 2. That it represents Matt Kremer.testing2 for my ID. And we are going to upload these. And now Appflow has the ability to use that set of credentials to sign an app that can go to my phone for com.mattkremer.testing2. So that's step 1. We're going to add the cert. Then another type of configuration we can do is a native configuration. So this starts to edit some native overrides. So we are going to name this, yet again, staging. The bundle ID is going to be com.mattkremer.testing2. So this is going to swap out the bundle ID for me. It's going to change it. So I don't have to worry as a developer about swapping out that bundle ID when I'm working with this. I can let Appflow do it for me. And then we're also going to change the display name, literally the name that will show up under the application on our phone. Let's call this, Matt's staging. Okay. And so it's going to rename that binary to Matt's staging for me as well. And then we're also going to want to change the live update channel it is checking into. So we are going to want to change the channel name to staging because we already set up a staging channel. And we are going to, obviously make sure that that's background and configure any other settings we'd like. So let's create that. And so what we wind up with is a set of native variables that we change. So that's the second thing. We did our certs. We did our native configuration. The third thing is found under automate, and it is our environment, okay? Remember how we set up that build script back here to take in an environment called build env and then pass it to our actual build? Well, we want to set that when we're performing any of these automations inside of Appflow. So let's call this staging. We are going to add a new variable called build env, and we are going to set the value to staging and create that. So that one's really simple. We have one variable because our build script is swapping out those configurations for me, and that's what we're using to get the actual data inside. So all we need to do is say, hey, set the build end to staging, and it'll go use that file in my actual build. So we've set up all 3 configurations for our staging channel. Okay, so we did the environments, we did the channel, we did the native configs, and the certificates. Now, I didn't want you to have to kind of go through all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually show you creating one automation real quick. So let's add a new automation. This is going to be called our staging iOS build. Okay, we are going to assign this to our staging Git branch. So any changes that go to the staging Git branch will be automatic here. We're going to choose a package automation. We are going to choose our staging environment that we just built, our staging native config. We're going to use iOS Xcode 11. We are going to use ad hoc as the build type because that's my security profile. We're going to use that staging security profile. If I wanted to add a webhook, I could. So let's create this. So we have our staging iOS automation where anytime I push the staging, we're going to get an iOS binary automatically. So there are obviously various automations we want to do here and go through this build process. So what I've done is I've done what Nick would call pulling a cooking show. We've already got a fully baked set of delicious cakes over here in this other place. So let's fast forward a little bit. Effectively, everything you just saw me do in this section, I've just done it multiple times, okay, for different styles of things I want to happen. So here we've got all the different automations. So I want to take a step back here and talk about each of these. We've got our development iOS automation. That is going to take any branch that has feature dash anything. So that's something that you'd use as a developer to say, you know, I'm working on a new feature. There might be 50 of these feature branches. For every single one of them, when a commit happens, we're going to run a full iOS build. Then we've got our development live update channel. That is the web build that we can use through the live update service. We have got our hotfix channel. So this is like if there's a bug in production and I need to fix it, I do hotfix dash and then the name of the hotfix. That is going to kick off a build to go to the production channel, but not automatically deploy it because I, as a human being, might want to verify that first. We're going to kick off a production iOS channel off master, which should always be stable. We're going to kick off a staging iOS binary off staging and a staging live update channel also off staging. And staging and development, I said, let's automatically deploy to the channels. That's fine. I don't need to manually approve those. Just go ahead and do them for me. We also did a similar thing with all of the different configurations. So one I want to call out is the native config specifically. If we look at the native configs, you can see the differences between my three channels. So we've got Matt Dev on com.mattkremer.testing1, Matt Prod on testing 3, and Matt Staging on testing 2. So I should be able to get all these binaries hooked up to their respective live update channels directly on my device. So we also did the same with certs. We added all three of our certs. We created our three channels as destinations, and we set up all of our different environments to change build M to either dev, staging, or production. So what I've done is I've already gone ahead and ran some of these. So I already went and committed a feature branch. I went and configured something on the master branch, and I went and did something on staging. So I want to get these three binaries on my actual device. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to development iOS. And here we can see I've ran this build that had the rockets. We're going to download it. Let's go back to our staging iOS. I've already got a build from this push to stagings. I'm going to download that. And let's go back to our production iOS off of master. I've already got a build that was performed. Let's do that. And so all of those were kicked off automatically when I performed the commit. Now that I have those three IPA files, I want to get them on my phone. So in case some people don't know this, here is the device and simulators view from Xcode. If you just open Xcode, hit Window, Devices and Simulators, and your phone is connected to your computer like mine is, you can literally drag IPA files into this and install them on your device. So let's take these three files that I got, and it's going to have this little busy indicator while it's installing that on my phone. And so we're just going to do this 3 times. So it is thinking. There we go. We've got Matt Dev. So we can see it did indeed swap out that name successfully. And we are going to throw on the other 2 to the device real quick. There's 2. We've got our staging. Now let's get our production binary. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check these out. We're going to make sure everything went according to plan and the demo has smiled upon us. So let's open the Matt Dev application. What we should see is a view very similar to the one that we viewed in Ionic Lab. So you can see, hello, development. This environment is using localhost. Great. Native binary went ahead and did it for me. If we look at staging, staging should show me the corresponding staging information. So we did not do this locally, right? This was all done in the cloud as an IPA file. So hello, staging. The environment is using staging.api.com. And then for production, we should see this environment is using production.api.com with production. So we've got all 3 binaries on my phone at the same time. Now, we've got a problem. There are 3 rockets here. And we showed this to management. And management said, Matt, man, we thought we were pretty clear about this. We don't want 3 rockets, okay? We want more cowbell. Okay, so we've got to get more cowbell into this thing and less 3 rockets. So we need a hotfix. Management wants this on people's phones in the production environment as fast as humanly possible. Cool. Let's go over to our code, and we are going to start a new branch to get this done. So we're going to do git checkout -b hotfix need more cowbell, and hit whoops. Oh, we hit an extra character in there. Let's get rid of it. All right, get rid of that extra character. All right, now we are on hotfix. Need more cowbell. We are going to make our change. We are going to get rid of our 3 rockets. We are going to open up the emoji picker here. And we are going to look for, very aptly, we're going to do a cow. If it would enter it for me. Did I miss? I might have missed. We're going to do a cow. And then we're going to add a bell. So now we've got environment cowbell. Hello, environment. This environment is using API.com. So we fixed it, right? Management's going to be happy with us. So let's do git add -p. Look at the changes that we made. We changed the 3 rockets to a cow and a bell. Perfect. So we are going to say, yes, we definitely want to stage that. We are going to do, let's just do a git status. I like double checking my work here. So yep, we modified that one page. We're going to do git commit. We are going to enter a commit message here. We are going to say more cowbell and add that. And then we're going to do git push origin. We are going to do hotfix need more cowbell. So that is going to go to GitHub and actually push this commit to GitHub for me. So that was literally just like, if you want to see that, that was my remote on github.com, Ionic Team 123 ABC, which is the thing we connected to at the very beginning of this demo. So now we pushed a hotfix branch. So let's see here if we can look at our automation. Is production hotfix automation. We can see there is an active build right now for more cowbell that was kicked off by this process. So remember, this process is not one we did automatically. It's one that we said we're going to go through and we're going to assign this to a channel. So we're going to wait for this build to finish, and then we are going to add it to the channel and show it on the phone. So this really is about automating the process here for deployment. So you can see like that feedback loop was, I got a message from my boss saying we need more cowbell, not as many rockets. We could commit the change. It's going to do this build. We're going to get it on a phone without going through the app store or anything like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can utilize that feature, right? One is stakeholder development, right? If you want a native binary, you sign it ad hoc, get it on your boss's phone and hook it up to a deploy channel. That's something where they could be listening, maybe to staging, right? Maybe on staging, you put the binary on there, and anytime you want that staging build up there, you just get pushed to the staging branch, and now it's on your boss's phone to check out. I use it for personal development sometimes. Like I just want to get the latest version of my little, side project I might be working on my phone. I hook up a binary to my development device on there. What we're looking for is that quicker feedback loop, right? We want to ignore it, right? We want this to be something where that DevOps loop from earlier that we talked about, we just want to go through it quickly and easily. So we're going to let this build real quick. We might also want to if Nick was looking over my shoulder here and Nick said, Matt, you need to be a better developer. One of the things I'd want to do is probably get this into my master branch as well. So let's merge hotfix need more cowbell into master here. What, Nick?
For what it's worth, I say that frequently.
Yeah, he does for sure. So we've got that git push origin master. I failed. Oh, it says master is already up to date. Maybe it helps if I could type right. There we go. I tried to merge it into itself. That probably doesn't work. Matt, there we go. Now we're merged.
Better developer.
Huh?
I said, Matt, you need to be a better developer.
I need to be such a better developer. This is why Nick is the director of product engineering and I'm the director of product management. But I will say, for director of product management, I can code more cowbell whenever you need me to, Nick, okay? All right, so this is still running just a little bit here. So we're going to let that continue to run. While that's building, let's kind of go forth and finish up the presentation, and then we'll come back to it and take a look. So first and foremost, Appflow is available if you go to useappflow.com and this process interested you. There's several plans on there that you can go check out. When it comes to utilizing this in an organization specifically, we do have scale plans available too. So if you want to do enterprise cert related builds, if you're interested in, not the cloud version and you need something a little bit more tailored to your security specs, we can work with you on that. We offer SSO options. We offer massive scale when it comes to utilization of Appflow's features. So you can always reach out to us about any of those things. When it comes to like the way this is used, like, yeah, I can use it, as a developer locally too, but this is also powering very big applications across the world in terms of getting updates and iterations out quickly and effectively to their customers. One of my favorite personally is the Burger King app. So Burger King utilizes the live updates service to allow people to get updates super quickly to their devices. So they are rocking and rolling with that, as well as some of our other favorite customers here are all utilizing either the live updates or the package feature to go through that. So
don't forget Go Ranger.
Oh, Go Ranger. We can't forget about Go Ranger. That's Matt's side project that I'm normally not allowed to talk about on webinars. Nick, you're going to get me in trouble.
Sorry.
All right, so let's see here. We are coming up on the end. Our job is successful. So because this is production, I also turned on web previews. So I'm going to preview this. I just want to make sure that I got it right. I don't want my boss mad at me. So this is our new web preview functionality here. We can see we've got the cow, we've got the bell. Build successful. Now that we looked at that web preview and double checked our work, let's go back and set this to live. So we're going to go into our automations here. We're going to go to that production hotfix. We're going to look at that build, and we are going to deploy it. So let's deploy a live update straight to production, baby. We hit deploy because we have already verified everything, and now that's set to live. So if I go to my phone here, let's close the application. So we've now got our 3 applications. We are going to, let's close it for real. Let's close all of them. Let's open Matt Prod, and we've got our 3 rockets. We used background mode. So in the background now, it's going to update here to the latest and greatest. And now we've got cowbell. So I didn't have to go through a native development process. I didn't have to go through the App Store. We've got all of that on our phone like magic. So from start to finish, we started out with nothing. We set up some multiple build environments, and we got all of those set up via automations right inside of Appflow for a variety of use cases. And then we rigged up live updates to get those updates right to our device. So those skills there, setting up the configuration both in Appflow and locally, and then setting up these automations, are what it takes in Appflow to set up that full CI/CD DevOps empowerment process in Appflow. So with that, go to useappflow.com and you can check out anything you'd like there. Like I said, the plans, the documentation you can find there. You can get started and checking out the features and setting up your CI/CD and DevOps process, all built on top of Appflow. We can jump right into some Q&A. I know we still have some time there. It's looking like one of the questions we got was going back to a little bit of the using this alongside other tools. Specifically, it looks like somebody asked about Jenkins. So for that, that is one of the scale plan features. If you want to go to our documentation here, you can look at the package or the deploy to app stores, any of these features, and go to the using Ionic command line section for those. That's something where with a minimal setup here, you can then go and use this Ionic package build command and specify the type of build, the security profile, the environment, the native config. So all the configurations we use manually in that automations UI, you can utilize from a command line perspective too. So effectively in your Jenkins pipeline, you would just add a step running this command, and that would kick off everything. Cool part is it pipes the output to the actual command line as well from the entire build process. So your Jenkins build literally has the output of running on a Mac, performing an iOS build, and then downloads the binary to that device. So it's almost like you built it on your Jenkins Linux server. And you can ignore everything and just kind of call it this one step, which is super powerful. Like I said, there's going to be a webinar next month run by Nick. So I'll get to make fun of him during that webinar. And we will talk about this way more in depth. So same super in-depth style demo, just using it alongside existing CI/CD tools, while mine was, pure automation set up right in the Ionic dashboard.
Couple other questions I want to touch on. There was a question about, does Appflow support multiple Apple accounts per Appflow account? So if clients want to publish their app under their Apple Dev account, is that possible? The answer is yes, and actually not just per Appflow account, but if you really need it per app too. Matt can maybe quick show the UI where you can set these up, but we consider in the dashboard there, the same place you go to set up a live update destination.
All right, where am I going? Deploy destinations.
That's right.
New destination.
We consider the App Store as just another destination, just like a live update channel is. You can set up these destinations, and so what you'll need is your Apple ID. There's docs on this. You'll need the app-specific password, the app ID, all those kinds of fun things, and then you can configure it. And just like channels, you can use multiple of these configurations per application. So that's really what you need. And if you do this, when you go to one of those destinations, you would be able to essentially, for an iOS build, when you trigger an iOS build, you're going to be able to turn on that test flight destination.
Yeah, so if I add a new automation here, let's say we want to stay in all staging to test flight, right? So we can do staging test flight. You saw me hook that up, so we'll do staging. We're going to do a package automation using the staging environment, the staging native config. We're going to target iOS. We are going to oh, mine is the wrong type. So anyway, you could go through and add this. It'd be a little checkbox that would literally just say like, go to that destination. So that's something where if you have the correct profile to go to that destination, it would have shown up and been fine there. But all of mine were a little bit different.
Let's see. Would live updates also be able to handle A/B testing? So the answer there is yes. There are customers that use it for A/B testing. There are customers who use it for basically beta channel testing as well, like early opt-in. So if you want to cut releases as a opt-in feature for some of your users 2 weeks ahead of your regular releases for everyone, you can do that flow. The way in which you accomplish that is that more advanced stuff that Matt was alluding to during the presentation in terms of manual setup. So there is if you go to the deploy documentation, you can find that the live updates documentation, there's an area that talks about the API that uses, so you can use a JavaScript API to sort of manage setting channels, configuring, in the top example, there's like configuring an app to look at like a beta channel. And you could do that for A/B testing too. So we don't have any sort of built-in like statistical analysis. So you would be basically, responsible for measuring any sort of outcomes of your A/B test on your own. But certainly you could easily show different versions to different users using this mechanism.
Yeah, you can do a split test. You can do beta opt-ins, right? So like a little toggle that like sets the beta channel to active, like this code right here, so that you can have people on the latest and greatest features. I do that for like, I have the Autobahn app on my phone, and like they have a beta channel that I just toggle on and like say I'm interested. So lots of different use cases there.
Yeah. So let's see. There was another question in terms of which is a really good one to bring up in terms of the live updates feature. And the basic gist of the question is that live updates is essentially changes to your JavaScript, HTML, CSS, the web side of your application. If you make changes to the native side of your application, that requires, say, adding a new plugin so you can access the camera. You hadn't had the camera plugin there before, or adding some other plugin that might make changes. You're not going to be able to ship that via live update because you're not allowed. That's against the terms of service in terms of shipping like actual compiled code over the air. So to prevent users from getting updates that are incompatible with their devices, we have this system called native versioning, which means you can take a particular web deploy live update build, and you can basically specify the minimum version that's released in the App Store that it's compatible with, and the maximum versions as well, to make sure that your users don't end up basically downloading some JavaScript that references a camera plugin that's not actually there. And this is the area in which you do that Matt has on his screen. So, that's how we suggest having customers manage that.
Another way to do it, if you'd like, that we do see some customers doing just for ease of use, is they'll actually set up a production live update channel per major version number. So they'll set up like the production 1.x channel, which has a certain set of native in it, and they'll continue to push to that until they need to add a plugin, drastically change native, and then they'll create a production 2.x channel and start using that as the production channel for the latest binary release. That's a way to set it up in a way where you can like backport really important fixes if you wanted to. So that would just result in multiple production deployment destinations. Cool. We have permission from the Ashton to continue, so we can go do even more Q&A. So let's add some more Q&A to it.
Yeah. So someone asked about using Appflow for PWA and native applications simultaneously. The answer is yeah. You can absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of the goal of Ionic, right? We want to support everyone being able to build their apps for multiple platforms: the web, Android, iOS. In terms of Appflow, generally what we suggest is those web live updates. Those can be customized to also do your PWA builds. At the end of the day, what you end up with is a zip of your PWA that you can download. Now, I'd be on the lookout for features that might land in the future in terms of actually having PWA style destinations that you can deploy your PWA to in production. What we currently support is basically a preview of your PWA, which Matt kind of showed with the web preview there. So you can look at that. You can see a preview of what the web version of your app is going to look like if you support the web version. If you don't, this might not work. Just be aware of that. If this is purely a native app and the plugins aren't going to be loaded here, this is meant to be a web version. You can actually scan the barcode down there to the QR code to see the version on a device, and you can share the link with someone else in your company. That's sort of how we support the web platform in Appflow.
Yeah, if you're watching this live and want to do something fun, and maybe we can make it work when it's not live too. But so like this hotfix we just did on the call, if I do the web preview, if you literally just open your camera app on your phone and point it at this QR code, it will literally load this into like Safari or whatever your browser is for you to check out and play with. So super easy over the webinar sharing built right into Appflow.
Let's see. Oh, there it is.
There you go. Nick's got my app. How's that for stakeholder approval? Nick, is my app good enough? Does it have more than enough cowbell for you?
I actually preferred the rockets, but
oh snap!
Revert.
We could revert. We could revert live. Should we? Let's revert live. Here, Nick, I'll fix it.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. There is a couple questions I noticed about Azure DevOps. We currently don't have support for connecting directly to repos from Azure DevOps like we do GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab. That is something we've heard and are exploring as a possibility in the future. The sort of workaround in the interim would be we do have what we call the Ionic remote for any of you using Get services that we don't support. You are able to actually just treat us as a remote. We're not intended to be a Git server ourselves or your source of truth, but you can use Git to push your changes to us, treat us as a remote, and we'll be able
like an upload mechanism.
Yeah, and that will work no matter what provider you're using. I do prefer the direct connections, and so that's something we're looking to explore in the future, but at this moment, we don't have that for Azure DevOps. Let's see.
For the build, let's answer that one, right? For the build, for development or debugging and testing, is it necessary to have a physical Mac machine, or can we rely entirely on Appflow and continue development testing in Android in a local environment if I'm in a Windows or Linux machine? So that's one where as long as you can get to the point where, like, let's say you have an iOS device and that iOS device has the specific debug tools installed on Xcode, like on it, you could have us perform a build and then get that build onto your device through like an ad hoc or an enterprise certificate for sure. As long as your iPhone has been effectively run a debug build before, you're fine.
And someone asked about pushing updates to Electron. Currently, the live updates, it does not, so Appflow doesn't support Electron, the platform, today in sort of any aspect. We can't do the builds or the live updates for Electron. So there's a good question that, hey, the question is what happens if a user closes an app during an update? The answer is basically, I suppose if the user was on a slow network and they were trying to download the update, didn't fully download before they've closed the application, the answer is they just wouldn't get the live up, like it would try again on the next open.
Yeah.
So if the app doesn't get fully downloaded in the background before they close and terminate the process, the update is going to be considered not successful. It's not going to show up the next time. And so the next time you open the app, it's going to reach out and say, is there an update? And it's going to retry downloading it. And so that will continue to happen until they spend enough time in the app where the download is successful or they're on a good enough connection, at which point it'll be marked as ready to be applied. And then the next time they open it.
And there are safeguards in place in the plugin that we use to actually download the updates too. So we have a lot of mitigation just by default for like broken builds and things like that.
Does Appflow work for Cordova apps and or regular Cordova apps? The answer is yes, it does. In fact, Appflow was originally built as is with only Cordova support because we didn't have capacitor quite yet when we built the original incarnation of Appflow. So the answer is we do. We like capacitor, so we're a little biased towards it, but we absolutely support Cordova. We also support, a lot of people, like you said, vanilla Cordova apps. So one thing that's recently happened in the ecosystem is maybe some of you have known that Adobe, the PhoneGap build, which is a similar-esque service in terms of building Cordova apps, was shut down and basically is being end of life. We have a migration guide in our documentation for customers coming from there who want to learn how to use Appflow. It's a pretty straightforward process. Depending on like how old your Cordova project is, you may have to like move a file or two around, but the migration guide goes through that, and you should be able to build that app in Ionic.
Yeah, so it's worth noting like whatever is inside the Cordova application doesn't necessarily matter too much, right? If we can build it, it'll work. So if you're on vanilla React inside of a Cordova, if you're on like whatever, it doesn't really matter. So Ionic is technically not a requirement.
Yeah, someone asked, they said, I hate to ask this, but the reality is that at their current work job, they use Subversion rather than Git. Appflow doesn't directly integrate with Subversion. I will say there are tools out there which basically try to help sort of like live convert a Subversion and some of these other tools to Git. So not like permanently, but like convert them so that you can use them. I've never personally tried using one. I know I think a couple customers maybe have used them and been successful. I would highly recommend Git, but I understand that sometimes that's obviously a company-wide initiative, but we don't currently support Subversion directly. But that doesn't mean it's not possible to use some additional tooling to help with that. Joseph Malone. I was gonna say, so someone says it also looked like the app was applied while you were using the app, didn't require a restart. I was wondering if someone's gonna catch that because I noticed that. The reason is that if you go look at Matt's automations, native configs, I mean, it looked like he accidentally set the background. He changed the mode in the build. So if you go to the native config in your demo application, he used our native config
Oh
feature
no.
to override the type. So that was the
Whoops.
experience would be with the auto method if you hadn't had your splash screen showing for long enough, which is why I always recommend background. I didn't want to call attention to it live in the demo, but when someone brought it up, it's worth addressing because maybe obviously other people noticed it. So
I'll go sit in the corner after the demo.
that was actually good catch. That was actually the auto method rather than background. Background, he would have needed to close the app and reopen it before he saw the cowbell.
My bad. Good catch.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I wanted to fix that, like all I'd have to do is go and edit these so that they are utilizing the background instead of the auto update method. So you can see that would change my native configs, and that would work with my existing automations, right?
Should I have to register for an Apple developer account or Ionic account is okay? So if you want to release on either of the app stores, you're going to need an account associated with those app stores. So for Apple, if you want to publish the app stores and sign certificates and build IPAs, you're going to need the Apple developer account. It's just kind of the harsh reality of developing for iOS. And if you want to publish, you don't need an account, I think, for Google in terms of like doing local development builds, but if you wanted to actually publish the App Store, you would also need a Google developer account.
So I think that's all the time we have for questions. I will say, though, it seems like a common theme as I scroll through the ones we can't get to today is that mentioning just tons of other Git hosts. So if your specific Git host is not one of the ones like explicitly listed in our documentation or available as a direct integration, you can always use us as that secondary remote and just use us as a different origin to push to, right? So effectively any Git system can work with us if you treat us as a secondary remote. So it doesn't really matter what it is or if we don't have a direct integration with it. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. If you want to learn more, like I said, use appflow.com. If you're interested in utilizing this in your organization, feel free to email sales@ionic.io, and we'll be on the lookout and would love to hear from you. And then one more time, next month, we will be having a super in-depth webinar just like this one about using Appflow alongside an existing CI/CD tooling in your organization. So be on the lookout for information and sign-up links regarding that too. Thanks, everybody, and have a good one.